Welcome, Exiles, to my Spark Inquisitor. This build strikes a beautiful balance between damage and defense, thanks to Aegis Aurora combined with Melding of the Flesh. This allows us to invest into something like Purity of Ice, a max res here, a max res there in terms of body armor implicits with the new influence mods, and all of a sudden we can get to 90 max alt res, Aegis Aurora with 30k armor, so we get a nice 600 ES every time we block, glancing blow block for that nice sustain via small hits, and basically immunity to shotgun deaths, and it ends up feeling quite cozy. We also stack a fair amount of regen via the Inquisitor that allows us to run Righteous Fire with ease for that damage boost, as well as the aesthetics, because Righteous Fire is just the best looking skill, and no one can contest that. If they do, well, we have to hang them for treason. Anyways, this build may not be for everyone. And by not everyone, I mean PoB warriors. If you want to do 10 million plus damage, this isn't your build. It does somewhere in the range of 1 to 5 million damage, depending on how progressed you are with gear and how big the circle is the arena you're fighting in. But for those of you who are normal humans and like to not die 6 times a map, well, it might be something you'll enjoy because it is a strong, tanky build that can feel safe even in a fight against something like a possessed Minotaur with Phoenix popping off in the background. It all just really comes together. All in all, I can wholeheartedly recommend this build. It isn't too expensive. We put it together for a few X, and we were able to take down all the in-game content, even up to a rare figured of monster level 85, thanks to the new passives. All in all, let's go in game, and I can describe the character to you. Welcome to the in-game portion of this guide. Now I'm going to try to keep it simple and straight to the point. Most of the information about how this build works, how it's put together, is going to be in the PoB, which I'm going to describe now. The path of building, this is the most important resource if you need information about pathing, passives, gearing, random questions like, hey, how do I get my ES regen going? How do I get my life regen going? How do I solve my mana issues? Where should I put my currency first? What should I invest into? Stuff like that I'm answering in the PoB. So you can go here and you can see, okay, what does the tree look like with clusters? What's the levels look like? What does it look like without clusters? I have recommendations for all those sorts of things. And then, of course, just going through it, you can scroll through and see exactly how I progress the character. But also, you can go over to the notes section, and I tried to write up a decent amount of information, like basics on what the build is, what we're focusing on doing here, playstyle, where I'm basically just going over, hey, you need to make sure you put down these utility skills when you're doing a boss fight. It is a huge DPS increase is the main thing I'm trying to cover here. Skill setups, basically gem links, skills you're supposed to link, supports you're supposed to link, stuff like that is all right here. Ascendancy order, basically, while you're leveling, you could either go for a DPS route of going for Righteous Providence and Inevitable Judgment first if you want to go for faster getting through the campaign and having Giga DPS, but you're going to be weaker on Sustain because a lot of the survivability is brought via Pious Bath and Sanctuary. So just some options. You can either go for the tank route or the DPS route first. Some basics like crafting. The crafting I did in this build wasn't really complex at all. It was pretty much just either A, I was buying rares that just fit the stat requirements I needed, which is usually the most budget thing you can do, is just buying like 3 stat, 4 stat rares and then bench crafting something. And then also I did some crafting where essences are way more common than they ever have been before. They're way cheaper than normal. And you can do stuff like buying a ring with fractured cast speed, fractured dexterity, and then you can throw some essences at it to try to get a few good stats if in case the market is quite expensive for the stats you're looking for on jewelry. This could be a cheaper option. I go over things like, hey, make sure to get Valspark. It's such a fun skill to press. Definitely do it. I never ended up getting to use it because I was always leveling my Valspark because it was so underleveled, and I didn't want to use an underleveled spark because it would decrease my DPS. And so don't do what I did. Make sure to get a Valspark early on. I go over gear stat priorities, what stats you want to prioritize getting on gear pieces. I go over where to put your currency first, how to progress your character when you're saying, hey, I just got to maps, I have a couple casts to spend, where do you put that? Hey, I just got the yellow maps, I have a decent amount more casts to spend, where do I put that? Stuff like that. Hey, I'm hitting a brick wall, where should I put some investment to make my character better and progress further into, getting into the deeper parts of the Atlas, making the character better, getting stronger, working your way towards taking down the endgame content. I also go over, solving RFD gen, solving mana issues, ways to improve spark damage. If you think the DPS is low, there's some investments you can do, or some basically things to prioritize to help improve the damage. I will say this, I'm not sure this build is particularly special in terms of DPS. I think we range somewhere in the 1 to 3-4 million range, basically, depending on if we have an optimal DPS circumstance. If it's a smaller arena like Elder Guardians or Shaper Guardians, the DPS is pretty solid. If it's a big arena like Cirrus, the DPS is at its weakest because the projectiles don't come back and hit the boss. Stuff like that to keep in mind. We can still do Cirrus, we can still do all the content. I did all the content with this character. And so keep in mind that the DPS fluctuates with Spark based on if the arena is super wide open or if the arena is more closed. And we started to get better at being able to handle a little bit bigger arenas by getting more prod speed in the build. I mentioned this in improving spark damage. I also go over alternative skills. Say you don't like spark, say you want to try a different skill. I go over recommended changes you should do to benefit basically scaling into something that isn't spark. The tree is relatively generic, and the main thing is you're just dropping the projectile speed clusters is the big thing, and then a few other things like changing out gem links. And then I also go briefly over some big points for if you want to go beyond what this character is here. I didn't want to invest very heavily into this character and make it super expensive. This was my league starter. I was trying to keep it in that shell of this isn't super expensive, it's achievable, you can do it, and then you can still beat the endgame content. I didn't want to take it to, this gear's so GG, I'm never going to be able to afford it, but it does delete the content when you get that level of investment. But in case you want to take this character further than I did, I go over quite a few bullet points of stuff that you can min-max and min-max and min-max to improve what the build is here. So hopefully this is a decent PoB note section to look at and reference if there's things you have questions on. I tried to go over all the information I thought of. I'm sure somebody will leave a comment that'll be like, oh, that's something I should add to the PoB. And if I have the time, I'll try to add it to the PoB, and I will basically write a notation in the description of this video saying, hey, the PoB has been updated for this thing or that thing that somebody asked me about. So hopefully this is a very useful tool to you. Anyways, I'm going to go back to the main address of the video in game. You're there. So hopefully that helps you put together the character. All the information that you could ever want and need hopefully is in the PoB to give you the tools, the information you need to put the character together and progress it well. Ultimately, this character was all about being budget friendly, because it was a league starter. And I think it mostly was. Aegis Aurora is fairly expensive. I am hopeful that this will go down in price throughout the league, but maybe it will continue to hold at the cost of 2x. But even then, it's still a fairly strong build with that investment of an Aegis Aurora, unless Aegis spikes to something insane. But for right now, it's a reasonable price, and maybe it'll get cheaper. And then also doing all the endgame content. Just today, we finished a rare feared with the passive that makes Maven Invitations have +2 levels. So we had a level 85 monster rare feared, and we were able to take it down. It was tough, we died a few times, but honestly I'm very happy with that outcome given the gear we have. It's mostly rares that I either sniped basically on trade for cheap, or things we crafted with a few essences. Like our chest piece, we just bought a 6-link chest piece for like 30C or something, and threw a couple res and life essences at it until we hit okay res and okay life, and then just bench crafted gain life as ES. Of course, we ended up min-maxing some of our implicits on our boots, on our gloves, on our body armor, and on our chest with the new influence currencies. I pretty much kept this solely to the lesser ones, the most cheap currencies, because the mods you can get with the lesser ones are still pretty good. You can still get Pierce, you can still get a max cold res, you can still get life regen, chaos res, all this stuff I try to keep relatively cheap in the lowest level currency range. Except for this chest piece, I splurged a little bit and I gambled a couple Orb of Conflicts to try to get the +2 max res when I hit +1 all max res. Ultimately, this would be better off with like +3 max cold res, which is what you could get. But I hit plus max res, and I wanted to just try to make it into +2. Stuff like that was a little bit more investment, but ultimately still very affordable in terms of gearing. I try to keep everything here simple, straight to the point, not too expensive, and still viable to do the content. All in all, I'm pretty happy with the build, and hopefully you guys enjoy playing it as much as I did. I was able to do all the content with it, and it felt good. But, of course, as always, I am a build maker, and I'm excited about the next few builds I got planned. We'll see how they go. If they are going well enough, of course, I will be making video updates on those. So check those ones out in the future. I got something special planned for my next build, which is going to be building around Crystallized Omniscience. I'm thinking about a Flicker Strike character that I have in my head that could be a lot of fun and very strong on hopefully a low budget. And then after that, I'm going to look more towards a min-maxing end in the character, which I'll reveal later if I'm able to acquire the gear necessary to put together something pretty special and very strong. So I got plans for builds to make, and that's what I'm going to be doing. It's not because I'm bored of this character or I didn't like this character. I just like to make new builds. I always get that question. It's like, oh, you're already re-rolling? Did you not like the build? Was there something wrong with it? And it's none of those. The answer is, well, okay, sometimes I make builds that are bad, and I re-roll if I make a bad build. And I won't recommend the build. I won't make a build guide about the build if it's a bad build. But if I make a build guide about it, it's because I think the build was strong. It performed well for the investment I put into it. I liked the build, and then if I'm switching out of it, it's because there's something else I want to play, because PoE is all about making builds for me. So hopefully that explanation makes sense. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you as always for watching. Take care, Exiles.